Welcome to another episode of Seeds of Tomorrow. Today's topic is climate change. During our journey, we spoke with institutions, big names in our PVR world, and today we are delighted to have with us the first female president of the European Council of Young Farmers, or CEJA, a farmer herself, an entrepreneur, and a passionate young farmer. She grows organic wine and olives in Italy. It is our pleasure to have with us today Diana Lenzi.
Good morning to you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. And in studio, we have Francesco Mattina, President of the CPVO. Good morning, Francesco.
Hello, good morning.
Diana, thank you for your time. We are interested in discussing with you, how do you see the global climate change and plant varieties intertwine in these times? What is your experience? How, in your opinion, has been being a farmer in these times of climate change?
Well, I must say it's challenging. I don't think farming was ever an easy job, but most definitely I see how things have gotten year after year more complicated, more unstable. Farming is a career, needs to be a career, first of all. So it's something that needs to be able to give a stable revenue to whoever is behind it. And the revenue comes from what we are able to produce to bring, in my case, to our cellars every year. I'm a wine grower. I make wine in Italy. And so my own financial stability, my own possibility to proceed in my career actually depends on how much I am able to take and the quality of what I am able to take back to my cellar every year. I wouldn't say I was born a farmer, but I definitely became a farmer, because when I took over our family winery, I left Rome and I left my career to go live at the winery. And I have been living there since 2008. And definitely I see the weather cycles, the weather patterns just becoming crazier every year, more unpredictable, less reliable. I mean, a plant needs a normal growing season. We need actually 4 seasons in the life cycle of a plant every year to be able to bring fruit to perfect maturation, and then also to give the time for the plant to rest and start producing again. And this has become less predictable, less possible, and every year kind of in a different way. We've gone from years of extreme drought and also of extreme sun irradiation, like an abnormal amount and quantity of sun and of heat and of desert-like air, to something completely the opposite, which was what we experienced last year, which was constant rain from May to the end of June. And when I mean constant, it was like 20 downpours of rain a day, but still in an average temperature of 18, 20 degrees, humidity. And for what was my experience, this basically destroyed my crop last year.
Francesco, from your perspective, a wider one at the European level, how do you see the climate change impacting plant varieties?
Well, Diana has said it has a huge impact on the whole production chain and the value chain, from the very beginning of the chain up to the consumers. So the varieties that were suitable for stability in terms of yield and in terms of productivity in the past are not any longer suitable under these conditions. So it's an increasing demand from farmers to get access to good varieties that can do the job actually under these conditions. And we have an even higher responsibility to bring to farmers good varieties that are fit for purpose under their conditions.
This was my subsequent question then. What's the role of CPVO in fostering this development of climate-resilient crops?
Well, the CPVO manage a system that provides incentive to breeders to innovate and to continue investing in research and development by doing what? In essence, by granting intellectual property right, which have a defined scope and this is capable of supporting the efforts of breeding companies. The majority of the investment is a private investment nowadays, and we have seen also through studies that this system can provide the right balance and the right incentive to bring to market new varieties with desired traits and desired characteristics that can satisfy the demand of farmers.
Diana, as a farmer yourself, what's your take on the importance of these rights? Not only as a farmer, but also as a young leader, as a powerful voice in the media and the PVR realm around us.
As we were saying, it is very important to start providing new varieties that are capable of counteracting the effects of climate change, that are more resistant, that are more resilient, that are more up to the new challenges. And in order to do this, we need to be able to foster research that can start delivering these tailored new varieties to the farmers. I think from a young farmer's perspective, we feel that, and this was also a lot of what came up in the debate that CEJA had when bringing out their position paper on the new genomic techniques, was basically that we know that the farming community is a very vast community, that there are, and diverse. And this diversification is both in terms of what we produce and where we produce it. So what we need to be able to ensure is a system that allows us to find all of the possible solutions for every single farmer in the world, and that also that farmer has access to these solutions. So I think that a system that helps to foster research, that also helps fund research through partially intellectual property, but also manages to make this not become a burden on farmers and on the cost that farmers would then have to sustain in order to get access to these seeds, is the balance we need to be able to strike. We understand that, of course, in research and development, we need to be able to then provide to whoever has developed a new variety a reward for that, an economic also remuneration for that. But we must make sure that this does not become then also kind of the roadblock to the access for farmers instead to those varieties. If the cost benefit for the farmer isn't also in balance, we might see again the system kind of just working for itself and then not just working actually to solve the problem, which is that we need new varieties for farmers across the world.
Here you used a peculiar word, burden. Do you see this as the major burden to grant access to the widest possible public, to what's out there to grab?
I would say definitely striking the economic balance is going to be very important and fundamental. The other big kind of roadblock I see, and therefore the burden we need to be able to help the farmer with, is the knowledge one. We have to understand that if we want to help farmers change their ways, produce in a way that is also more in line with the needs and the necessities that are coming from climate change, it is not just through a more resistant seed that we will be able to achieve this. We need to find a way to share a knowledge with farmers in general on what could be new ways to be more resourceful in these demanding times. So may it be on water efficiency, may it be on how we do plant protection. It's an holistic kind of type of knowledge we need to be able to provide to farmers for them in order to find which is the right solution in their specific production system and area, where the resistant seed is a part of this system. It's not the one solution. And so I really believe that the knowledge gap in understanding what could be done for them in order to become more resistant and resilient in these demanding conditions is the other fundamental piece of the puzzle we need to have in place.
From what you are saying, Diana, I also can provide my, let's say, insight from visits and trying to understand what's happening in the territories. And it's clear to me that all the actors of the value chain have a role to play. And just to give you an example, which is somehow related also to your field, because you said you are active in winery. Last week I was in Puglia, so in the south of Italy, and we learned of a very promising research activity that is done by the Department of Agriculture of the University of Bari. And we learned that a group of producers, so also involving farmers, are founding the research in plant breeding done by the Public Institute. So in a way, this group of producers is putting resources and therefore money for the Public Research Institute to run a program of plant breeding, not only for the grapes that can be consumed, not for the wine industry, but they also told us that they are starting also a breeding program with traditional cepage, so the traditional local one, in order to find, for example, resistances that can be then offered to the producers. So this is an example that, as you can see, kind of a participatory plant breeding program where you put under the same roof the producers, all local producers. So there is a demand from the community, the local community, to have to have an adapted breeding research program. And they are using the know-how and the expertise of the public body, that is the Department of Agriculture of the University of Bari. And the aim finally is to bring back to the community better varieties, new varieties that they can exploit, that they can use, and eventually they can collectively decide or even to license outside of the territory. Because imagine that one of these variety is good for production, in Brazil, for example. This activity that start in the territory, that start in that region, can even go internationally and can bring further benefit to the same community. So these kind of examples, there are also other examples similar to this in other regions, in Europe, in other countries. I can tell you that I visited a similar experience in a region of Spain which is much affected by extreme climatic condition, the region of Murcia. And the same, let's say, collective effort that puts together on the same level the farmers, the producers, and the research, and the way public-private partnership can play together to provide the expected results for this community to continue doing farming. Because at the end of the day, we have to give them options. The toolkit has to be very rich in options. And if we don't deliver them options, of course, the competitiveness also of these communities will disappear and they will struggle more and more. So I think that this is, among other examples, one of the ways that we can provide value added to the territories, to the communities, and empower them to make use of innovation. And then the issue of the knowledge gap that you reported, by putting together in this experience, for example, the knowledge of the breeder, because behind this program there is usually one breeder. One solo man or woman can make the difference in such a program. And on the other side, a group of producers that have the understanding of the added value of innovation and that can learn from the scientist. This can really become a success story that we might be able to see replicated in different contexts. I don't know if you have seen also recently, there is a lot of news on the success of Chile, for example, in exporting their cherries, their wine grapes to different continents, even back to Europe, because we... And you may know that one of the most successful variety in the cherry production are those of the University of Bologna. They have been tested for years in Chile under their climatic condition, and now they are so successful, it's the sweet series, that they might even be accepted by farmers locally on top of their own local varieties. So this is just to say that through innovation and education and knowledge sharing, also smaller local communities can benefit, can see the benefit, and can grow.
Francesco was mentioning a toolkit, a much needed one that we need to have, and we need it big. I was thinking, Diana, in your perspective, are there policies that you see should be implemented, or we are very keen in seeing implemented throughout Europe to help create this shared framework, a framework that will enhance this toolkit for the benefit of all?
Well, yes, of course. And I think everybody is really in a moment of great expectation as to how the trilogue is going to end up with the regulation on new genomic techniques, knowing that this would be definitely a big step forward in, again, enhancing and allowing research to start having also an active role. And so also to start basically not only having research within labs, but also starting to see how we can transform something that is working in theory and in practice within a lab, actually on the field and on the ground. I mean, I know in my case, my skepticism, for example, has nothing to do with the scientific side of being able to be provided, for example, with a variety of Sangiovese that is resistant to Peronospora. My need would be to see how it actually then proves on a fruit level, on an organoleptic level, once put in my fields. Is it comparable to the traditional variety? And so we actually need to start developing research on field for many of these different varieties. And so that regulation is definitely something that is right now, I think, keeping everybody's breath, because it is so much in the hands of every single member state and on the decision on what the council will be able to come up with, that really, in a way, puts a great work that was done, and it may not be perfect, but it's definitely a first step, and a much needed first step is still kind of jeopardized by the politics behind it. So I am concerned. I am hopeful. We've been doing a lot of work trying to at least be able to be in the ears of those who want to hear, and hoping that the ones who so far were not very convinced can understand that this is a responsible choice. I just wanted to add something on what Francesco was saying before about the much needed cooperation within the value chain. This is not just something that has to do with plant breeders and farmers. This is how we are thinking of reshaping the food system. How are we planning on delivering safe and sufficient food for humanity in the next 20, 30 years? And understanding that we are in great need of as many possible solutions as possible, that we need to be able to provide farmers with also plant varieties that are not only more resistant, but also that in their being more resistant can help us decrease the use of water, the use of plant protection products, the use of other things that are jeopardizing our way of being sustainable in farming, is the responsible choice. And we also need to make sure that this is understood by our consumers, by the end of our value chain. And this is why I put it together with the politics. We have now ministers who are the people who are in charge of governments, and so who are the ear and are responsible for the people of their country and who bring forward the interests of their countries. They need to be the vessels of information. They need the ones who can, in a way, be the torch bringers of this innovation for the better good of everyone. Because we are in a critical situation. We are in a situation where also understanding how we are going to provide food security is not as simple as it maybe could have been 10 years ago. It's not just through productivity. We have a number of compelling and competing issues that make our job as farmers more complicated every day. And so we need to be able to, confide in science. If science and research is able to give us solutions, we need to be able to open that door. And second of all, we need to be able to communicate that this is not a decision that is, again, just for the benefit of the farming community, but it is because the farming community provides for the whole of civil society. We don't just farm for what we are going to eat. We farm for what is on every person's table. And we love doing our work, but we need to be put in the conditions to do so. So this is why I really believe that this is the moment in which a positive pressure on member states and on civil society is important, because a lot is at stake. And this was a big step forward into allowing science and research to start providing more solutions. And if we see this very long debate that brought to the publication of the proposal and to the co-decision be jeopardized by the fact that we're walking into EU elections, then I'm afraid that how many thousands of steps back this will bring us to.
So, Diana, you see the issue of raising awareness among citizens, European citizens, under the remit of their national government rather than an overall campaign done by the European Union. And I'm with you because we need to eat and farmers are providing us food. But there are, in Europe, not all the countries are the same. We don't see throughout all the European countries the same amount of farmers and farmers able to apply pressure. Are you seeing this at the national level? Am I getting you right here?
I'm saying that, so how do I put this? Considering that it was the European young farmers' voice singly who came out with a position paper on NGTs, I am noticing that unfortunately the international farming community, probably for its internal conflicts and maybe because they couldn't come to an agreement as we did not put that same pressure. I mean, we have been so vocal on the issue of NGTs and on the proposal of NGTs, and we have worked in great cooperation with DG Sante. We've provided insight. We've been in a participatory way very involved, and we have been the voice of farmers, even if we were just the representatives of the young farmers. Maybe it's because, again, we kind of see in the next 60 years our future, and so we're trying to build a future for 60 years. I have not seen that same united, strong voice come out at other levels in the EU bubble. So maybe what we have to do is use the strength that we had managed to put together there and bring it back at national level and explain to our farm organizations at national level who could not find an agreement at international level that now is the time to put pressure on our ministers. And again, I unfortunately see this debate being very much jeopardized by the political moment, while it cannot be a question of political diplomacy or election strategy. This is the future of agriculture that we have at stake, and in an agriculture where numbers are not proving us that the sector is healthy, we need to start creating something that is capable actually of rejuvenating itself, standing strong in the next 60 years, and again, providing safe and sufficient food for everyone.
Diana, why, in your opinion, there is often in this debate a kind of a dichotomy or opposition between some, let's say, groups advocating for the tradition and the importance of tradition, keeping the tradition, and other groups that insist on the importance of innovation? In a way, some groups have a tendency to try to convince also the consumers that what was old is always better and what is modern is not so good. There are risks for the health that we are not able to even to prove, and eventually the scientists prove the contrary. But it seems that this message is not heard always. And on the other side, my impression is anything that today may look tradition or traditional is the outcome of an innovation of the past. And what we innovate today in 30 years or 40 years will be a tradition or something that is not any longer innovative. So there is a continuous move and through tradition and innovation. And if we don't progress on innovation, we don't maintain the tradition, we lose it. So what is your perception of these two topics? So on one side, we said tradition, especially in a country like Italy, for example, but this could be true also for other European countries. You can take other examples. And so tradition for some people goes hand in hand with quality, with respect for the territories, etc., whereby innovation is seen sometimes as a threat or a risk or something we should deny. I mean, what is your, and even more in the winery sector, where it's a rather conservative sector, right? So how do you see this?
I think you really hit a spot here when you talk about tradition and innovation. And I've been trying to give it a lot of thought. I developed a little bit of cynical point of view on this, which we'll use partially in my analysis, which is it's market related. So if you have a market share that is being protected by the fact that you have branded your product as traditional, as in that tradition, quality, you are not going to be willing to lose a market share for that. Even if the science, even if the math, even if every logic tells you that that product is better. So what I have figured out as a solution is we need to start detaching tradition of product from innovation of process. What we are trying to introduce here is an innovation of process. And we have innovated a lot in process. We have, the agriculture of 1945 has nothing to do with the agriculture of 2024 because we have innovated in mechanics, we have innovated in chemistry, we have innovated in process, still producing the same traditional products. So we can say that a DOP product, let's imagine that the Pachino tomatoes started developing a specific disease that is indigenous to a pest that is arriving from Africa, and we can provide them, through an innovation of process, a way to protect their plants from this. You can say that I am protecting the tradition of that product through an innovation of process. We need to start detaching the two things. I can produce my traditional Chianti Classico DOCG wine going through every single step of the regulation. But if I am using a plant variety of Sangiovese that is resistant to Peronospora, to downy mildew, I can then demonstrate that I am using a lot less protection products that I wish I could. In my case, that I am an organic farmer, I could start detaching my fields from using copper-related products, which are unhealthy for my soil and actually also for the consumer, but we are not allowed to say this. But it is true. Since the day I started, I converted my farm to organic. And I did it because we were doing it as a general decision in our territory, and we wanted to be an organic distretto, and that was fine. It was a way of also looking at 360 degrees at farming within our territory. I knew I was not doing the best possible decision for my soil because I knew that using a copper-related product leaves a residual of a heavy metal in my soil, and that will, in time, probably a very long time, deteriorate the health and the organic matter of my soil. So I've been asking ever since for an alternative to this. But again, because there is a market that is very stable and very solidly held by a regulation on the organics, it's something that we do not want to touch because it's a market share. Funny thing is, I actually don't even market my wine as organic. You will never find on my label that my wine is organic. I never did it as a marketing decision. I never did it to get an extra premium on the price of my wines. I actually did it again because I was looking at my farm in a very holistic way. And I actually was happy to detach from plant protection products that were systemic to actually work with something that was also helping the plant to kind of fight back on its own a little bit more. But had I had a plant that was resistant to downy mildew last year, I would have not lost 90% of my grapes in some of my fields. And again, I go back to my first point. I am a farmer. I might not be the farmer who is feeding the world, but I am still a farmer. I create economy through my work. I provide jobs for the people who work for me. I pay people who provide me everything that has to do with packaging. I create an economy for a small region that is a rural region. In order to survive, I need to be economically healthy. I need to be a solid business. If I lose all my crop, and also wonderful other thing, there is no insurance for climatic effects such as downy mildew or for diseases that are climatically led. The economics of my farm fail.
Indeed, you're right. At the end of the day, we're talking about keeping a solid business afloat because this is a useful thing to do. Well, one, for the entrepreneur herself, and then for society at large because they can benefit of the product you are producing. You spoke about leading the way and also taking into account 6 years from now, you are still a young farmer, but what kind of advice will you give to a younger farmer that is willing to enter this, not a career, not a path, lifestyle mission?
No. I would look at him in the eye and say, you need to build a career out of this. I'm sorry, I had a moment of almost mental breakdown during one of my latest events in September, where I told people that they need to start telling us that in order to save agriculture, we need to make farming sexy again. No, we need to help people build solid business plans. And to understand how to build a solid business plan, you also need to, again, look into the future. So you need to understand what is, for example, the topographic situation in which you're working today. Is it likely to be stable in the next 60 years? Is the type of production that you've decided to plant now going to be suitable in the next 60 years? We have so much data on how climate is evolving and changing, and how we are going to adapt. Does it make more sense to plant grapevines now in Tuscany, or does it have actually more sense to plant grapevines in the northern part of Germany? Probably the second. And then we will have to build a tradition there. And that is what you need to do. So then you need to understand your product. Where do you plan to place it in the world? It makes sense that my friends now in Sicily, instead of planting grapevines, are planting avocados, because this is the climate that is now striving there, and that will probably be the type of climate in which they will be working with for the next 30, 40 years as an investment. So, and then same goes if you want to have dairy cows, and you need to understand, where are the economics? Where is your market? It's sad to see producers that are producing, for example, organic milk, actually have to then declassify it because there is no market for organic milk. The economics still work for them, but this is what they are doing because there is not a market. So does it make sense to say that we want to increase the area of farmland in Europe to organic farming to 25%? Maybe in one way, yes, but we also need to make sure that we're building the basis of an enlargement also of the market, that consumers have the power to buy products that have a different cost, have a greater cost, have a better environmental output, and maybe can get benefits from that. But we need to be able to do this kind of really looking at things in a very not dogmatic, very scientific, very straightforward, again, way. It's the business of providing food.
Indeed it is.
Yeah, but yes, I'm listening to your call for making this understood also by consumers in the right way. And are we asking too much to farmers and young farmers? Do they have all the tools, or are we asking the impossible to this community? Because what you say means, so nowadays a farmer is somebody who has knowledge of artificial intelligence, IT, economics, business model, agriculture, horticulture, meteorology, chemistry, etc., etc. So is it really possible that? I mean, you are a farmer, and how do you manage your business with all this knowledge?
He should have all that knowledge, but we got, again, because every single human being only has 24 hours a day and 365 days a year to live, and once every 4 years, 366. We have to understand that we can't imagine a farmer to have all of this. Of course, we should be training, I think, farmers initially a little bit, again, with a broader spectrum of the various skills they could be acquiring. Second of all, it's synergy. No man can do anything on his own. This is my other great belief. And I think that the farming community is a community that actually really manages to confide in one another, and that also appreciates peer-to-peer learning. So I've always believed that in creating synergies in farming communities, but also farming international communities, is the best way to get the knowledge that you might not have all the time to gain directly, and that maybe you won't need. But if you had a community to which, again, ask a question and get the advice or get redirected to where you could get that information, that advice, this is an easy way to start at least kind of matching questions and answers, issues and solutions. We just need to also kind of implement this as a system. And I think that in the world of today, with how we are digitalized, it's not difficult for a farmer to do this. I mean, my friends who are on their tractors, in their very modern tractors, but still that need the human component to be on the tractor. So they spend all the time that they are on their tractor listening to podcasts.
That's a good thing to do.
It is. Yeah, you could listen to, I mean, you don't have to listen to a podcast on farming all day, every day, but knowing that they are there and that you can use that time to gain some more information is an excellent way. But you need to convince the farming community that they are in lack of alternatives right now, and they need to be provided as many tools as possible. I'm also like using the spice rack kind of thing. I might never have to solve the problem in Petronio of water management, but because I simply cannot irrigate my vineyards by law. But it is very interesting for me to see how the farming community right now is solving this problem. I am, again, a winemaker. I am now cooperating with a foundation that works on anaerobic digestion and using the anaerobic digestion system as a possible model for sustainable farming. Has nothing to do with what I do. It has to do with, again, people who have dairy farms and biogas plants. But it is fascinating for me to be a part of that world because I see a farming community that wants to provide solutions, that is solution-oriented. And this is what we need to tell young farmers, that we are now in a huge challenge, but I also believe that in the huge challenge moment, this is where you open the opportunities. This is where you reshape the way we farm. This is how we reshape how we're going to provide for humanity, because it is kind of our mission, it's our role, it's our job description is to provide food for humanity. And that solutions can be found, and there are a lot of solutions out there, and there are other farmers that can help you in uptaking that knowledge and in understanding what the solution needs to be in your farm. But you need to have an open mind for this.
And this concludes our episode today. A big thank you to our guests and to our listeners. Keep following us on the socials to stay updated on the latest episodes. This is Alessio De Laurentiis signing off. The music you're listening to is from Giacopo, a Lombardi and Amoruso production.